That night, as I left the garage, a group of thugs blocked my car, their iron rods and switchblades glinting under the yellow streetlights. I thought my life was over, until the company's old janitor suddenly appeared. In mere seconds, he took down each of them with the precision of a seasoned close combat expert. I was stunned. This wasn't just an ordinary cleaner, but a former Marine with a mysterious past. He whispered in my ear, "The one who wants you dead isn't far away. They're closer than you think." From that moment, I stepped into a true nightmare, one where the culprit was none other than my own flesh and blood. Hello, my name is Lincoln Fletcher. I'm 38 years old, living in Phoenix, Arizona, where the desert sun scorches everything from the sand to people's dreams. I'm the CEO of Skyline Dynamics, a construction technology company I built from the ground up with my own two hands. From the outside, you might think I'm a successful man with a gleaming downtown office, million-dollar contracts, and a young, passionate team. But if you asked me honestly, I'd tell you the road to get here was anything but paved with roses. It was a journey filled with blood, sweat, and emotional scars that still linger, like a shadow that never leaves. I was born into a family with a long-standing tradition in Arizona's construction industry. My father, Martin Fletcher, was the head of Fletcher Construction Group, a company once the pride of the state with massive projects stretching from Phoenix to Tucson. My mother, Gloria, stood behind him, managing finances and partnerships with a cold smile and eyes that never missed a detail. They were a power couple, but stubbornly traditional. My father believed his rigid authoritarian approach built on old connections was the only path to success. Any new ideas or innovations were dismissed as foolish nonsense. I worked for Fletcher Construction Group when I was young, fresh out of college. I joined the company with a fire in my belly, convinced I could bring change and push the business further by embracing technology and modern construction methods. I proposed using advanced project management software, eco-friendly materials, and even experimenting with bolder designs. But every time I spoke up, my father would look at me with a mix of pity and contempt. "Lincoln, you think you're smarter than me," he'd say, his voice low and sharp as a blade. "This company was standing strong before you were born, and it'll keep standing without your fanciful ideas." My mother wasn't any better. She always sided with my father, or worse, with my younger brother, Shane. 7 years my junior, Shane was arrogant, a playboy, and endlessly spoiled by our parents. He never had to prove himself, never faced my father's harsh words or my mother's disappointed glares. Shane had their full support, money, connections, a cushy position in the company. While I fought for recognition, Shane just had to show up, flash his dazzling smile, and crack a few jokes to get everything handed to him. Once, when I tried to convince my father to invest in a renewable energy project, Shane laughed out loud in the middle of a meeting, calling my idea childish. My parents joined in as if it were a family joke I wasn't privy to. The breaking point came when I was 28. During a family meeting, as I tried once again to pitch a plan to modernize the company, my father stood up and slammed his hand on the table. "Lincoln," he growled, his eyes blazing, "you'll never have what it takes to inherit this company. If you don't like how I do things, get out." His words hit me like a dagger to the chest. I stood there, frozen, feeling my world collapse. My mother sat silently, saying nothing. Shane smirked, his eyes gleaming with triumph. I left the family company soon after. Not because I wanted to give up, but because I knew staying meant forever living in my father's shadow, Shane's shadow, and the weight of expectations I could never meet. I left with nothing but a few loyal friends and a fierce belief that I could build something greater. That was the day Skyline Dynamics was born. The early years of starting up were a nightmare. My friends and I worked out of a tiny office in the Phoenix suburbs, with rickety desks and outdated computers. We took on small projects, home repairs, mid-sized commercial builds, jobs Fletcher Construction Group wouldn't even glance at. My father mocked my company, calling it a stinking pile of trash, nothing more. My mother said I was digging my own grave. Shane, as usual, just sneered and predicted I'd come crawling back to our parents. But I didn't give up. I stayed up nights perfecting designs, calling clients, convincing them to believe in Skyline Dynamics' vision. We integrated technology into construction, project management software, advanced materials, saving time and costs. Slowly, small projects turned into bigger contracts. A restaurant, a shopping center, then a modern office complex in downtown Phoenix. Skyline Dynamics started gaining attention, and I began to feel a pride I'd never known working for my father. After 10 years, Skyline Dynamics became a formidable name in Arizona's construction industry. We weren't just competing, we were surpassing bigger players, including Fletcher Construction Group. My father's company, stuck in its outdated ways, started to falter. They lost market share, old partners switched to us, and the lucrative contracts my father once bragged about now landed with Skyline Dynamics. I didn't set out to destroy them, but every contract we won made it clear my parents and Shane saw me as a thorn in their side. Family tensions grew worse. The rare family dinners became silent battlegrounds. My father stopped mentioning my company, but his bitter glances said enough. My mother constantly defended Shane even when he showed up late, drunk, or openly mocked me. Shane, backed by our parents, grew more arrogant. At one family gathering, he loudly asked in front of everyone, "Lincoln, I hear your company landed a big contract, huh? You sure you can hold on to it, or will you lose it like you lost your place in Dad's company?" The room erupted in laughter, except for me. I swallowed the pain and stayed silent. Deep down, I knew I'd chosen the right path. Skyline Dynamics wasn't just a company. It was proof I wasn't the failure my father claimed. Every building we raised, every contract we secured, was a testament that I could succeed without my parents' or Shane's approval. Little did I know, in the shadows of those successes, a storm was quietly brewing. A plot I never could have imagined, orchestrated by the very people I once called family. It all began one late night at Skyline Dynamics headquarters, under flickering fluorescent lights and an eerie chill that hinted at something ominous. I stepped out of the office, the leather briefcase heavy in my hand, the sound of the door locking echoing sharply in the deserted hallway. The clock was nearing midnight, and the entire building seemed enveloped in an eerie silence. The neon lights overhead flickered weakly, casting long, distorted shadows across the marble floor. The sound of my dress shoes tapped rhythmically, a monotonous melody in the quiet space. I pressed the elevator button, and the sharp ding rang out, cold and piercing like a warning no one heeded. The elevator took me down to the basement, where the parking garage awaited. As the doors opened, a gust of cold air hit my face, carrying the scent of motor oil and damp concrete. I stepped forward, my footsteps echoing, and for a moment my chest tightened. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was just exhaustion, I told myself, or my stressed mind conjuring up all sorts of nonsense. I'd only taken a few steps when a figure emerged from the corner of the hallway leading to the parking lot. It was old Alan Hayes, the janitor who'd been working in this building since Skyline Dynamics was founded. He was frail, his thin frame stooped, his gray hair disheveled under a worn baseball cap. His cleaning cart rattled noisily, and in the dim light, his face appeared etched with deep wrinkles like a map of the years he'd lived through. "Hey, Mr. Allen," I said, forcing a polite smile despite my urge to get home quickly. "Working late tonight?" The old man didn't respond immediately. He stopped his cart, his gnarled hands gripping the broom handle tightly, and his piercing eyes locked onto mine. There was something in his gaze that made me pause. It wasn't the look of an ordinary janitor. It was sharp, as if he could see right through me, through the polished businessman facade I wore every day. "You shouldn't go out tonight, Lincoln," he said, his voice low and gravelly, each word chosen with care. "It's not safe." I blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean?" I gave a small laugh, trying to lighten the mood. "Mr. Allen, I'm just heading home. What's not safe about that?" He didn't smile. He stepped closer, the cart rattling like a warning. His eyes remained fixed on me, and for a moment a chill ran down my spine. "There are things you don't see," he whispered, his voice so low I had to strain to hear it. But I see them. And I'm telling you, it's not safe tonight. I frowned, a flicker of irritation rising. What was wrong with this guy? I knew Alan Hayes was an odd one, always working quietly, rarely speaking, sometimes disappearing for hours with no one knowing where he went. But I'd never pegged him as the type to spout cryptic nonsense to scare people. "Mr. Allen," I said, keeping my tone calm, "I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." "Really? I just need to get home and sleep." He didn't budge. He stood there, blocking the path to the parking lot as if trying to stop me. "You don't understand," he said, his voice still low but now carrying an urgency. "I've seen things like this before. The signs. The people lurking around here. Don't dismiss what I'm telling you, Lincoln." My irritation grew. It had been a grueling day, wrestling with everything from tense client meetings to the pressure of an impending contract. The last thing I needed was an old janitor throwing vague warnings at me that would keep me up at night. "Mr. Allen," I said, my voice rising slightly, "I don't have time for this. I need to go. You should get some rest too. It's late." I brushed past him, deliberately avoiding looking back. But after a few steps, his voice cut through the air behind me, cold and sharp. "If you're set on going, at least turn on your headlights and check your rearview mirror. Don't ignore what I've said, Lincoln. You'll regret it if you do." I stopped for a split second, my heart beating faster. There was something in his tone that made it impossible to completely dismiss him. An old janitor, probably working too long in this gloomy garage, letting his imagination run wild. I shook my head and kept walking toward the parking lot, my footsteps echoing in the cold space. The basement garage opened before me, vast and dark, lit only by flickering fluorescent bulbs. My black SUV was parked in the far corner, silent like a waiting specter. I gripped my briefcase tightly, quickening my pace, trying to shake the unease clinging to me. Alan's words lingered in my mind, uninvited. "It's not safe tonight. Check your rearview mirror." I opened the car door, tossed the briefcase onto the passenger seat, and slid into the driver's seat. The keys jingled as I inserted them into the ignition, and the engine roared to life, shattering the garage's silence. I switched on the headlights, their white beams cutting through the darkness, illuminating the cold concrete pillars. I glanced at the rearview mirror just to be sure, but saw nothing except vague shadows. "Ridiculous," I muttered, chuckling at myself. "You're letting an old man get to you, Lincoln." I pressed the gas and the car rolled slowly toward the exit. I turned on the radio, hoping for some music to dispel the heavy atmosphere, but the signal was spotty, emitting only annoying static. I sighed, switched it off, and focused on driving. The garage exit loomed ahead, a dark tunnel leading to the surface where the city lights awaited. But just as I was about to accelerate, a strange sensation washed over me. It felt as if someone was watching me from some hidden corner in the darkness. I glanced at the rearview mirror again, and this time, my heart seemed to stop. For a fleeting moment, I swore I saw a figure dart behind my car, swift as a shadow. I slammed on the brakes, whipping my head around, but there was nothing. Only darkness and silent concrete pillars. "Damn it," I muttered, my heart pounding. "You're scaring yourself, Lincoln." "Calm down." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The SUV rolled slowly through the tunnel leading out of the garage, the headlights slicing through the darkness, illuminating the stained concrete walls. The engine's low rumble wasn't enough to drown out the unease gripping my chest. I glanced at the rearview mirror once more just to be sure, but saw nothing except vague shadows. "You're just scaring yourself, Lincoln," I mumbled, attempting to laugh it off. But the laugh was hollow, unable to dispel the chill spreading through me. As I neared the end of the tunnel, close to the exit leading to the surface, a deafening sound shattered the silence. Bam! 3 cars surged in from both sides, blocking the exit like a steel wall. Their headlights blazed, glaring straight into my eyes, forcing me to squint. My heart raced, blood rushing to my head. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The car doors swung open in unison. From the shadows, 4 or 5 figures emerged, their movements slow but menacing. They wore black masks concealing their faces with only their cold, glinting eyes visible under the headlights. One held an iron rod, another brandished a switchblade, its steel blade flashing with each sweep of the light. The leader, taller than the rest, dressed in a black leather jacket, jerked his chin toward me. His voice was deep and raspy, as if trained to instill fear. "Get out of the car, Fletcher," he said, his tone icy. "You're not going home tonight." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't a random robbery. They knew my name. They were targeting me. But why? What was their plan? In that split second, a dozen questions swirled in my mind, but I had no time to answer them. Instinctively, I locked the car doors, my trembling hands fumbling for the phone in my jacket pocket. "Stay calm," I told myself. "Call 911, the police will come." But before I could dial, a thunderous crash rang out. The thug with the iron rod smashed it against the windshield, creating a long, spiderweb-like crack. I flinched, the phone slipping from my hand and clattering to the floor. "Get out now," the leader barked, his voice now laced with anger. He struck the windshield again, and I knew it wouldn't withstand many more hits. My heart pounded wildly, sweat beading on my forehead. I glanced at the rearview mirror, hoping for an escape route, but both sides were completely blocked. I was trapped, like an animal in a cage. Just when I thought it was over, a figure suddenly burst from behind a concrete pillar. I blinked, unable to believe my eyes. It was Alan Hayes, the frail old janitor I'd spoken to just minutes ago. He stood there, silent but resolute, holding only an iron broom with a gleaming steel handle. His thin frame and disheveled white hair were bathed in the dim light, but something about his stance sent a shiver through me. This wasn't the posture of an ordinary old man. It was the stance of someone accustomed to danger. The thugs noticed him too. The leader turned, sneering. "Old man, get lost," he growled. "This isn't your place. Scram unless you want trouble." Alan didn't respond. He stepped forward, slow but steady, his eyes never leaving them. The broom spun lightly in his hands, wielded like a weapon he'd mastered. "I warned him," he said, his voice low and calm, his gaze fixed on the leader. "Tonight isn't safe. And now you're the ones who'll pay for ignoring that." The thug with the iron rod laughed, the sound echoing in the cold garage. "This old man's crazy," he said, then swung the rod at Alan, aiming to knock him down. But what happened next left me speechless. In a flash, Alan sidestepped, the broom sweeping down to strike the thug's knee. The man screamed, stumbling and collapsing, the rod clattering to the ground. Before the others could react, Alan spun, his elbow slamming into the face of the second thug, who fell back, clutching his face and groaning. I sat in the car, mouth agape, unable to process what I was seeing. The old janitor, who I'd thought only swept floors and emptied trash, was taking on a group of thugs like a seasoned warrior. His movements were precise, deliberate, as if he'd been trained for moments like this. Another thug charged, his switchblade glinting. I shouted, reaching for the door to help, but Alan seemed to have everything under control. He dodged, disarming the thug in an instant, then drove the blade into the floor, pinning it to the concrete. The sound of metal striking cement rang out sharply, a warning. The thugs panicked. The remaining ones stepped back, their eyes wide with fear. The leader cursed, his voice trembling. "Who the hell is this old man?" he shouted, then signaled to his crew. "Let's go." They scrambled to drag their injured comrades into the cars, doors slamming as the vehicles roared to life and sped out of the garage in a frenzy. Their taillights faded into the tunnel, leaving behind a heavy silence. I sat there, breathing heavily, my heart still pounding like it might explode. I opened the car door and stepped out, my legs so shaky I nearly fell. Alan stood there, adjusting his worn jacket as if what just happened was a minor chore. The iron broom remained in his hand, a trusty companion. I stared at him, stammering, unsure of what to say. "My God, who are you?" I finally managed. "I thought you were just a janitor." Alan looked at me, his eyes softening but still carrying that indescribable sharpness. He shrugged, his voice low and calm. I think we should sit down and talk for a bit, Lincoln. To calm down and understand each other better. I nodded, still in shock. The garage fell silent again, broken only by my ragged breaths. I stared at Alan. The man I'd thought just minutes ago was nothing more than a harmless old janitor, now standing before me like a living enigma. Let's go, Alan said, gesturing toward a corner of the garage where a small bench sat for the security guards to rest. Sit down for a bit. You need to breathe, and I need to explain. I followed him, my legs still shaky, my mind reeling with 1,000 questions. We sat on the bench, the faint glow from the overhead bulb casting a dim halo around us. The garage was freezing, but sweat still beaded on my forehead. I looked at Alan, searching for words to begin, but all I could manage was, You just saved my life. But who are you? Why are you here, and how did you know this was going to happen? Alan smiled, a faint but meaningful smile, as if he'd been waiting for this question for a long time. He removed his worn baseball cap, revealing his disheveled white hair, and leaned back, his gnarled hands resting on his knees. My name is Alan Hayes, he began, his voice low and deliberate, like he was recounting a story buried for too long. I'm 67 years old. And I'm not just an old janitor like you thought. I blinked, waiting. Alan took a deep breath, his eyes drifting across the garage as if peering into a distant past. I was a U.S. Marine, he said. Served in 3 war zones, from Vietnam to places you've probably never heard of. I've seen it all, war, blood, and things even worse. When I left the service, I didn't want to be some old man spinning war stories in a bar. I chose a quiet life, doing simple jobs like this. He gestured toward the cleaning cart nearby. But don't be fooled, Lincoln. Once you've lived through those days, your instincts never sleep. I listened, my mouth dry. A former Marine, working as a janitor in my building? It sounded like something out of a movie, but after what I'd just witnessed, I didn't dare doubt him. So, you knew something? I asked, my voice trembling. About them? About what just happened? Alan nodded, a glint of steel in his eyes. For the past few weeks, I've noticed people lurking around this building. Strange cars parked on the corner, guys in dark clothes standing across the street smoking, watching everything. They weren't petty thieves, Lincoln. They moved with purpose, like they were scouting. I recognized the smell of danger right away. Old soldiers' instincts never fail. A chill ran down my spine. But why target me? I asked, my voice nearly breaking. I'm just a businessman, not a criminal. I don't have enemies, or at least I didn't think I did. Alan looked at me, his gaze now cautious. You're a successful man, Lincoln, he said, his voice low but sharp. Skyline Dynamics is growing, taking market share, and that makes you a target. Success always breeds envy in this industry. It could be a competitor or someone who wants to stop you. I don't know who yet, but I know one thing. Those guys weren't acting randomly. They were hired, and someone paid them to come after you. His words sent a shiver through me. I thought of the major contracts Skyline Dynamics had recently won, the bitter glares from industry players. But then, another thought crept in, one I didn't want to face. My father, my mother, Shane. No. I shook my head, trying to banish the image. They might not like me, might resent my success, but they were family. They wouldn't do something like this. Or could they? My throat tightened. Alan seemed to read my thoughts. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I slipped a tracking device under one of their cars, he said, his tone calm but confident. Not during the fight. I'm not that fast anymore. He chuckled softly, the first hint of humor I'd seen in him. When I saw them storm into the garage, I slipped behind a pillar before they noticed me. I tossed the tracker under the nearest car as they pulled up. Lucky for us, they were too focused on you to notice me. He pulled an old phone from his jacket pocket and opened the screen. A red dot blinked on a map. "Where are they now?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "A warehouse on the outskirts of Phoenix," Alan replied. "If you want to know who's behind this, we need to follow the trail." I stared at the blinking red dot, my heart pounding harder. "What about calling the police?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Isn't that what we should do?" Alan shook his head. "The police might catch the thugs, but they're just hired hands. The real mastermind, the one who paid them, won't show their face that easily. If you want the truth, Lincoln, you have to see this through to the end. But I warn you, the truth might not be what you want to hear." I sat there, my mind spinning. Part of me wanted to call 911, let the police handle everything and end this nightmare. But another part, deep inside, burned to know the truth. I thought of the massive contract Skyline Dynamics was about to sign, one that could transform the company's future. I thought of the venomous looks from my parents and Shane, the cutting words they'd thrown at me. If this was a plot, if someone was trying to destroy me, I needed to know, no matter how painful the truth might be. I took a deep breath and looked straight into Alan's eyes. "All right," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'll go with you. But if this involves my family..." I paused, my throat tightening. "I'm not sure I'm strong enough to face it." Alan placed a gnarled hand on my shoulder, his gaze as steady as steel. "The truth, whatever it is, has to be faced, Lincoln," he said. "And this time, you're not alone." I nodded, but my heart was still flooded with unease. Alan's words were like a cold wind, sending shivers through me. The truth. I craved it, yet feared it all the same. I stared at the blinking red dot on Alan's phone screen. It was like an invitation, pulling me into a nightmare I wasn't ready to face. But I knew if I turned away now, I'd live forever in doubt and fear. "All right," I said, my voice hoarse but resolute. "Where do we start?" Alan gave a fleeting smile, just enough to calm the storm inside me. "Tomorrow morning," he said, standing and adjusting his jacket. "Get some rest. You need to be sharp. I'll check the tracker signal and make a plan. Meet me at the cafe across from the building at 8 a.m. I nodded, but my mind was still spinning. As Alan walked away, his frail figure fading into the garage's shadows, I felt like a lost child, saved from one nightmare only to step into another. I climbed into my car, my hands still trembling as I inserted the key. The engine roared to life, but I didn't drive off immediately. I sat there, staring into the rearview mirror as if the thug's shadows still lurked somewhere in the darkness. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe earlier than planned. Phoenix was awake, the desert sunlight streaming through the windows, but it couldn't dispel the chill in my heart. I sat in a corner, my black coffee growing cold in front of me, my eyes fixed on the people passing outside. Every time the door's bell chimed, I flinched, half expecting the thugs to have found me. I hadn't slept much the night before. Images of black masks, the sound of the iron rod smashing my windshield, and Alan taking down the attackers replayed in my mind like a horror movie on loop. At exactly 8 a.m., Alan walked in, still wearing his old baseball cap and janitor's jacket. He sat across from me, placing his phone on the table. The red dot on the screen had stopped at a location on the outskirts of Phoenix. "They stopped here, a high-end restaurant in downtown," Alan said, pointing at the map. "That means they're meeting someone, likely the person who hired them." "A restaurant?" I repeated, frowning. "Who meets a bunch of thugs in a place like that?" Alan shrugged, his eyes sharp. "People with money and power. People who want to keep their hands clean while hiring others to do their dirty work." He tapped his fingers on the table, his voice lowering. "We'll follow them, observe from a distance. But you need to stay calm, Lincoln. Whatever you see, don't act impulsively." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I could manage that. We left the cafe and got into Alan's vehicle, an old, weathered silver pickup I never would have imagined he owned. He drove through Phoenix's bustling streets, the harsh sunlight glinting off skyscraper windows. I sat in the passenger seat, gripping the seatbelt, trying not to let my mind spiral into the worst possible scenarios. When we neared the restaurant, Alan parked in a discreet spot a few buildings away. It was a luxurious place with gleaming glass doors and a gold-plated sign reading The Oasis. I'd heard of it, a hotspot where businessmen and politicians met to seal major deals. Alan pointed to a black SUV parked near the entrance. "That's their car," he said. "The tracker's still active." We sat in the truck watching from afar. Soon enough, I saw the thugs emerge from the SUV. They weren't wearing masks anymore, but their movements and attire still radiated danger. They headed straight into the restaurant, up to the second floor where private VIP rooms were tucked away. My heart raced. "Who are they meeting up there?" I muttered, more to myself than to Alan. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out another phone, a smaller one with a strange device attached. "This is a contact microphone," he explained, his voice calm. "It can pick up sound vibrations through walls. If we can get into the room next to theirs, I can hear what they're saying." I stared at him, incredulous. "You have something like that? Where did you get it?" Alan chuckled, his eyes glinting. "You think a retired Marine just sweeps floors? I've got some old contacts and a few toys from back in the day." He motioned for me to follow. "Come on. We need to book a VIP room right next to theirs." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding, but I followed him. We entered the restaurant, and I tried to keep my expression neutral like any businessman there for a meal. The hostess led us to the second floor, and by some stroke of luck, the VIP room next to the thugs was available. Alan quickly reserved it, and once the door closed, he pulled out the contact microphone, attaching it to the shared wall. He put on earphones, focusing intently while I stood there, feeling like my heart might explode. After a few moments of silence, Alan signaled for me to stay quiet. He switched the device to a low-volume speaker, and a voice came through, clear but menacing. "My brother needs to disappear before that contract is signed," the voice said, cold and sharp, familiar in a way that made my blood freeze. It was Shane, my brother. "Don't screw this up again. This time, make it clean. No traces." I went numb, my heart stopping. Shane, my brother, the one I'd shared family dinners with, argued with, hoped one day might understand me. I looked at Alan, praying he'd tell me I'd misheard, but his eyes only confirmed my worst fear. One of the thugs responded, his voice low but clear. "Got it. We'll keep eyes on him. Second time's the charm. A car accident or a random robbery?" My head spun, the world crumbling around me. They didn't just want me dead. They were planning a second, more meticulous, more ruthless attempt. A car accident? They'd stalk me? I wanted to storm into the next room, grab Shane, and scream, demanding to know why. But Alan placed a hand on my shoulder, his gaze stern. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We have this recording. It's evidence. If you show yourself now, we lose everything and they'll act immediately." I clenched my jaw, hot tears threatening to spill. Shane, my own brother, was plotting to kill me again. And if he was capable of this, who else was involved? My father? My mother? The thought stabbed my chest, but I couldn't deny it. Alan quietly detached the device, stowing it in his pocket, and signaled for us to leave. We exited the restaurant, me moving like a ghost, each step heavy as if carrying the weight of the world. Back in the truck, Alan looked at me, his voice low but gentle. "You okay, Lincoln?" I didn't answer right away. I stared out the window, the phoenix sunlight now just a hollow facade masking the darkness beneath. "I don't know," I finally said, my voice trembling. "If Shane's doing this, if my family's behind it, and they won't stop, I don't know if I can handle it." Alan nodded, not pressing me to say more. "We don't know the whole truth yet," he said, "but we'll find it. The next step is to follow the money, trace it back to whoever hired those thugs. That'll be undeniable proof. But from now on, you don't go anywhere alone. I'll stay close, and we need to be careful. They're planning a second move, Lincoln. We have to be faster than them." I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the tidal wave of emotions inside me. "I have to be ready," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Whatever the truth is, I need to know. And I won't let them win." Alan nodded, his eyes glinting with a spark of approval, yet still carrying the caution of a seasoned man. He started the pickup truck, its engine roaring to life, shattering the quiet of the street corner. The blazing Phoenix sunlight streamed through the windshield, but it couldn't dispel the cold gripping my chest. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I imagined a black car flashing by or a shadowy figure lurking at the street's edge. Alan's words echoed in my mind. "They're watching you, a car accident or a robbery." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms as if physical pain could drown out the storm raging within me. We returned to my apartment, but Alan wouldn't let me stay alone. "You're not safe here," he said, his voice low but resolute. "They know where you live. From now on, you stay with me at least until we have enough evidence." I nodded, not arguing. I packed a few clothes, my laptop, and some documents, then followed Alan to a modest, weathered house on the outskirts of Phoenix, a humble place with peeling walls and a worn armchair in the living room. But here I felt safer, if only slightly. Perhaps it was Alan's presence, with his sharp eyes and steadfast stance, like a shield between me and the darkness stalking me. That evening, we sat in Alan's living room, the dim light from an old table lamp casting shadows on the wrinkles of his face. He played the recording from the restaurant, Shane's voice ringing out again, cold and ruthless. "My brother needs to disappear before that contract is signed. This time, make it clean." Each word was a dagger to my chest. I listened to it over and over, searching for any sign that it wasn't Shane, that I'd been mistaken, but the voice was too familiar. I clenched my fists, hot tears welling up, but I gritted my teeth to hold them back. Now wasn't the time for weakness. Alan pointed at the recording, his voice steady and deep. "Shane mentioned that contract," he said. "That means he's not acting alone. Someone's behind this, giving orders, paying for it. We need to follow the money. It's the fastest way to unmask the mastermind." "The money?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "How do we find it?" Alan gave a faint but confident smile. "I have an old friend, a former Marine buddy now working in private security and specializing in financial investigations. His name's Marcus. I'll contact him, ask him to trace the hidden transactions. If those thugs were paid, there'll be a trail. Bank accounts, shell companies, or something that leads us to the one pulling the strings." I nodded, but my mind was in turmoil. The thought that Shane, my brother, might just be a pawn in someone else's game sent a chill through me. But who? A business rival? Or worse? I didn't dare follow that thought, but images of my parents flashed in my mind. My father's harsh gaze, my mother's cold favoritism. I shook my head, trying to banish the idea. They were my family. They couldn't. 2 days later, Marcus got back to us. We met him at a rundown diner on the outskirts, a grimy place with plastic tables and the heavy smell of frying oil. Marcus was a middle-aged man, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and eyes sharp as a blade. He slid a stack of documents across the table, his voice low and concise. "I followed the trail," he said. "A large sum was transferred from an account tied to Fletcher Construction Group through 3 shell companies before reaching the thugs. Someone in your family's company is paying to have you eliminated." My blood ran cold. Fletcher Construction Group, my father's company, my mother's, Shane's. I looked at Marcus, hoping he'd say it was a mistake, but his gaze only confirmed my worst fears. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Could someone have hacked the company's account or—" Marcus shook his head. "No signs of a hack. The transactions were made through official accounts with high-level authorization codes. Only a handful of people in your family's company have that kind of access. Your father, your mother, or Shane." I sat there, feeling like the world had collapsed beneath me. My father, Martin, who once told me I wasn't tough enough to inherit the company. My mother, Gloria, who always looked at me with disappointment and showered Shane with love. And Shane, my little brother, now plotting to kill me. My chest tightened, as if there were no air left to breathe. They really want me dead, I whispered, unsure if I was speaking to Marcus, Alan, or myself. Alan placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice gentle but firm. I've seen soldiers betrayed by their own comrades, Lincoln, he said. And you're in a different kind of war, a family war. But you're not a victim. You can stand up and face them. We have the recording and now we have the financial trail. But to be certain, we need more evidence. Something they can't deny. I looked at him, hot tears streaming down my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. They're my family, I said, my voice breaking. Did they ever see me as their son? Or was I just a thorn in their side from the day I was born? Alan didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his eyes carrying a deep empathy, as if he'd felt similar wounds before. You can't change the past, Lincoln, he finally said. But you can decide your future. What do you want to do? Go to the police now, or keep digging for the truth? I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the pain tearing through my chest. Going to the police would be easier. Let them arrest Shane, my parents, and end it all. But I knew if I did that, I'd never uncover the full truth. I'd live forever in doubt, wondering why my family betrayed me. I want to know everything, I said, my voice hoarse but resolute. I want to face them with undeniable evidence. I want them to answer for what they've done. Alan nodded, his eyes gleaming with determination. Then we keep going, he said. But from now on, you need to be more careful than ever. They know you're alive, and they won't stop. They'll try again until they succeed, Lincoln. We have to be faster than them. I swallowed hard, feeling as if a stone were pressing down on my chest. Alan's words were a cold reminder that danger still lurked, like a specter hiding in the brightly lit streets of Phoenix. The rain drizzled lightly outside the park, tiny droplets clinging to my hair, making me shiver, not just from the cold. I looked at Alan, trying to keep my voice steady. What do we do next? I asked, though deep down I knew each step forward would plunge me deeper into this nightmare. Alan stood, adjusting his jacket, his gaze sharp as a blade. We set a trap for them, he said, his voice low but resolute. Your parents, Shane. They think they've got everything under control. We'll let them incriminate themselves right in their own home. A hidden camera, a tiny microphone, and their own arrogance will do the rest. The next day, I drove to the Fletcher estate on the outskirts of Phoenix, my heart heavy as lead. Alan sat in the passenger seat, quietly inspecting a tiny camera and a wireless microphone, devices he called old-school toys. Record everything, he whispered, his voice calm but confident. You just need to stay calm, act like you're giving up. They'll dig their own graves. The estate loomed into view, a sprawling mansion with marble columns and gleaming glass doors, but it exuded an unspoken coldness. This was once the place I called home, but now it felt like a prison, where dark secrets were hidden behind opulent walls. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and felt like I was walking into a lion's den. Alan followed, playing the role of a bodyguard I'd hired, a part of the plan to avoid suspicion about his presence. I knocked on the door and the longtime housekeeper, Clara, answered. She looked at me, her eyes flickering with surprise before settling into polite neutrality. Master Lincoln, she said softly. What a surprise. The master and mistress are in the living room. I forced a strained smile and stepped inside. The air inside was heavy, the scent of polished wood mingling with an intangible tension. My father, Martin, sat in a leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in hand, his gaze as cold and piercing as ever. My mother, Gloria, stood near the fireplace, her elegant dress impeccable but her smile stiff. Shane wasn't there, a fact that brought both relief and unease. I wasn't sure I had the strength to face him just yet. Lincoln, my father said, his voice deep and icy. What are you doing here? Come to apologize for tearing this family apart? I clenched my jaw, struggling to stay calm. I came to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I know someone's trying to hurt me. Last night I was attacked in the company garage. I hired this bodyguard. I gestured toward Alan, standing silently in the corner, to protect me. But I don't want to keep fighting. I'll step back, let go of the big contract. I'm tired. My father raised an eyebrow, a triumphant glint in his eyes. Smart move, he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. That's the wisest decision you've ever made, Lincoln. My mother stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder, but her touch was cold, like a rehearsed performance. Lincoln, you've worried me so much, she said, her voice feigning gentleness. If you behave, everything will be fine. Our family needs to stay united. I looked at her, my heart aching. Her words sounded like comfort, but her eyes gleamed with calculation. I wanted to scream, to demand why they wanted me dead, but I remembered Alan's advice. Stay calm. Let them expose themselves. I nodded, feigning exhaustion. I just want this to stop, I said. I won't cause trouble anymore. While I spoke, Alan moved quietly around the room, pretending to check the windows like a diligent bodyguard. But I knew what he was doing. With swift, practiced movements, he planted a hidden camera behind a framed painting and a tiny microphone under the edge of the wooden table in the study. The devices were so small they'd go unnoticed, even under scrutiny. Alan returned, giving me a subtle nod to signal everything was in place. We left soon after, leaving my parents in their smug satisfaction. Back at Alan's house, he connected the devices to his laptop, and the screen began streaming footage from the estate. The visuals were crisp, the audio clear. I sat there, my heart pounding, waiting for what I both hoped and dreaded. Not long after, Shane appeared on the screen. He strode into the living room, his usual confidence tinged with a trace of tension in his eyes. My father stood, his voice booming through the microphone, thick with arrogance. He's given up, he said, laughing loudly. Lincoln's always been weak. A little pressure and he folds. That contract is ours now. My mother laughed, a cold, cutting sound. You did well, Shane, she said, but next time tell them to make it cleaner. No loose ends like that mess in the garage. Shane smirked, his voice sharp as a knife. Don't worry, Mom. We got what we wanted anyway. I sat in front of the screen, my breath catching in my throat. Their words, their smug tones were like daggers piercing my heart. My father, my mother, Shane, they didn't just want me out of the picture, they wanted me gone entirely. Alan placed a hand on my shoulder, his gaze gentle but resolute. You've got everything, Lincoln, he said. This footage, the recording, Marcus's financial data, no one can deny it now. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my skin. Tears streamed down my face, but I no longer felt weak. Instead, a fire of rage ignited within me, burning fiercely and unquenchable. They'll pay, I whispered, my voice trembling with anger. I'll take them to court. I want them to look me in the eye and know I've won. Alan nodded, his eyes gleaming with approval. We'll make it happen, he said. They've dug their own graves. Now we just need to seal the coffin. The next day, Alan and I met with a lawyer recommended by Marcus, Elena Martinez, a sharp-witted woman with eyes like steel and a formidable reputation for handling financial crime cases in Arizona. We sat in her modern office in downtown Phoenix, its windows overlooking the glittering skyscrapers under the desert sun. I recounted everything, from the attack in the company garage, the recording of Shane meeting with the thugs, to Marcus's financial data, and the video from the Fletcher estate. Alan sat quietly, chiming in only when necessary, but his presence was a steady anchor. Elena listened, jotting notes in a leather-bound notebook, her gaze never leaving me. When I showed her the final video, she paused, taking a deep breath. This is powerful evidence, she said, her voice low but certain. The recording, the financial transactions, and the incriminating video, this isn't just attempted murder. It's money laundering and organized crime. The Arizona Attorney General will jump on this case. But Lincoln, you need to brace yourself. This isn't just a lawsuit. It's a public battle, and your family won't sit quietly. I nodded, my heart pounding. I know, I said, my voice hoarse, but I need justice. I want them to pay for what they've done. Elena gave a faint smile, both empathetic and resolute. Good. I'll prepare the lawsuit. We'll charge Martin, Gloria, and Shane Fletcher with conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and organized crime. With this evidence, they'll have a hard time escaping. Just days later, I filed the lawsuit with the Arizona Supreme Court. The news spread like wildfire. Phoenix newspapers splashed headlines. Young entrepreneur sues family for murder conspiracy. Skyline Dynamics versus Fletcher Construction Group. The media swarmed, reporters gathering outside Skyline Dynamics' office and the Fletcher estate, cameras flashing like they wanted to devour everything. Public opinion split. Some supported me, calling me courageous for standing up to evil. Others, acquaintances of the Fletcher family, whispered that I was an ungrateful, disloyal son, fabricating stories to destroy the family legacy. My parents and Shane reacted as I'd expected. My father called, his voice roaring through the phone. "You dare sue your own parents, you ungrateful wretch. You'll regret this, Lincoln." My mother appeared on television, her tears glistening with theatrical flair, claiming I was paranoid, trying to ruin the family out of jealousy. Shane, as usual, took to social media, posting lengthy rants accusing me of being a traitor, a failed entrepreneur desperate to topple Fletcher Construction Group to save Skyline Dynamics. But I didn't waver. Each accusation only fueled my resolve. Alan stayed by my side, reminding me to stay calm, while Elena worked tirelessly, preparing for the trial like a warrior ready for battle. "They're panicking," she said during a meeting. "People like them always try to create smoke to hide their guilt. But we have the evidence, Lincoln. And evidence doesn't lie." The trial opened on a rare, cool autumn morning in Phoenix. The courtroom was packed with reporters, cameras trained on me as I walked in, Alan by my side, his demeanor quiet but commanding. My parents and Shane sat at the defendant's table, surrounded by an expensive team of lawyers. My father glared at me, his eyes filled with contempt, as if I were still the disappointing son he'd always seen. My mother avoided my gaze, but her forced smile couldn't hide her tension. Shane, true to form, smirked, his eyes gleaming with arrogance. Their lawyer stood, his voice smooth as oil, spinning a tale that I was a fabricator, a jealous entrepreneur concocting fake evidence to bring down Fletcher Construction Group. "Lincoln Fletcher has no credible evidence," he declared to the court. "The recordings and videos could be manipulated. This is a scheme to tarnish one of Arizona's most respected families." But then it was Elena's turn. She rose, calm but commanding, and began her presentation. First came the recording from the Oasis restaurant, Shane's voice ringing out clearly, discussing with the thugs how to eliminate his brother before the contract was signed. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom, the jury's eyes sharpening. Next, Elena presented Marcus Harlan's financial data, detailing transactions from Fletcher Construction Group through a shell company, Desert Holdings LLC, directly to the thugs' accounts. "This was no coincidence," Elena said, her voice cutting. "This was a meticulously planned scheme funded by the family's own company." Then came the decisive moment. Elena played the video from the Fletcher estate. The courtroom's large screen lit up, showing my father, mother, and Shane gloating about how Lincoln had given up, and their plans to make it cleaner next time. My mother's cold laugh, Shane's arrogance, and my father's triumphant tone echoed through the silent courtroom. The room fell still. Some reporters gasped, the jury whispered among themselves, and I saw my father's face pale. My mother cover her face, and Shane slam his fist on the table, his eyes wild with panic. Their lawyers tried to counter, arguing the video could be edited, the voices fabricated. But Elena was prepared. She called a digital forensics expert from the Arizona Department of Public Safety, who confirmed the authenticity of the recordings, video, and financial data with no signs of tampering. Alan also took the stand, testifying as a former Marine that he had personally planted the devices and followed proper procedures. "I know what the truth looks like," he said, his deep voice resonating, "and the truth is right here in front of you." After hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The judge read the verdict, his voice ringing like a fateful bell. "Martin Fletcher, Gloria Fletcher, and Shane Fletcher are found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and organized crime." My father shot to his feet, his face ashen, struggling against the ruling. My mother screamed, collapsing on the courtroom floor, pleading in desperation. Shane glared at me, his eyes burning with hatred, as if I were the one who had ruined his life. I sat there, my heart heavy. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but I wasn't crying out of sadness. I was crying because at last the truth had been laid bare. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to let the air calm the storm of emotions raging within me. Alan placed his weathered but steady hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Lincoln," he whispered, his voice low and certain. "You won, not just for yourself, but for what you're building." I stood, my legs trembling, but Alan was there, a steadfast anchor. We walked out of the courtroom, reporters immediately swarming us, shouting questions. But Alan raised a hand to hold them back, his voice deep and authoritative. "Leave him alone," he said, and the crowd parted, letting us reach the waiting car. The weeks following the trial were a whirlwind. Fletcher Construction Group, once Arizona's pride, crumbled swiftly like a sandcastle before the tide. The company's stock plummeted, major partners severed contracts, and banks moved in to seize assets with dizzying speed. Headlines screamed, "From construction empire to shocking assassination plot, the fall of the Fletcher family." The media uncovered more scandals, from shady transactions to my father's history of strong-arming competitors. Fletcher Construction Group, once a symbol of power, became a stain on Arizona's history. Public opinion was a double-edged sword. Some praised me, calling me a hero for daring to stand against evil, even when it came from my own blood. Others, particularly those who knew the Fletcher family, whispered behind my back, labeling me a family traitor, an ambitious ingrate willing to destroy everything for personal gain. I tried not to care about the whispers, but each time I read an article or saw a comment on social media, a sharp pang hit me. I hadn't wanted to destroy my family. I just wanted to live. The sentencing day arrived under a clear blue sky. The courtroom was packed again, but this time the air felt heavier, as if all of Phoenix was holding its breath for the final verdict. I sat in the front row, my hands clenched, palms slick with sweat. Alan was beside me, silent but ever present, like the father figure I'd never truly had. The judge, an older man with a stern gaze, read the sentences, his voice resounding like a fateful bell. "Martin Fletcher," he began, "is sentenced to 20 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and organized crime." My father stood, his face pale, lips pressed tightly together. Gone was the arrogant glare, the lectures about family legacy. He was led away, and I saw his shoulders tremble slightly, as if he finally grasped the cost of his ruthlessness. "Gloria Fletcher," the judge continued, "is sentenced to 15 years in prison for complicity and aiding in concealment." My mother wailed, her hands gripping the wooden table as if clinging to her lost dignity. She looked at me, her eyes filled with resentment and pain, but I felt nothing but a cold void. She had chosen Shane, chosen power, and now she would pay the price. "Shane Fletcher," the judge went on, "receives a 25-year sentence for directly orchestrating the murder conspiracy and associating with a criminal organization." Shane leapt to his feet, shouting curses. "You'll regret this, Lincoln!" He screamed as he was led away, his eyes blazing with hatred, but his voice faded, dissolving into the air as the courtroom doors closed behind him. When the judge's gavel struck its final blow, I felt as if a door in my heart had closed too. Justice had been served, but it brought no joy. It left only an emptiness, where family dinners, summer days playing ball in the backyard, and memories I once thought were real had been. I stepped out of the courtroom, the sunlight glaring again, but this time it didn't blind me. I felt a slight relief. as if a weight had been lifted. Alan walked beside me, saying nothing, but his presence was enough. "You okay?" he finally asked, his voice low and gentle. I stopped, gazing at the horizon where the Arizona desert stretched endlessly. "I don't know," I said, my voice hoarse. "I won, but I lost everything. My family. They were gone long before this, weren't they?" Alan placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled with empathy. "Family isn't always about blood, Lincoln," he said. "Sometimes family is the people who choose to stand by you when the world turns its back." I nodded, tears streaming down again, but this time I smiled. The months following the trial were a strange journey, both painful and liberating. I returned to the Skyline Dynamics office, but each time I stepped inside, I felt an emptiness. My employees, who had stood by me through thick and thin, now looked at me with a mix of awe and concern. They knew the story. Who didn't? When it dominated every headline. Young entrepreneur Lincoln Fletcher. From victim of a family conspiracy to symbol of justice. But I didn't feel like a symbol. I was just a man trying to stand up after his entire world had crumbled. Skyline Dynamics began to thrive. The trial had thrust my company into the spotlight, but not in a negative way. New clients came knocking, major partners placed their trust in us, and we secured contracts I had once only dreamed of. But those victories couldn't fill the void in my heart. Some nights, as the neon office lights illuminated my weary face, I thought back to the family dinners of the past. The days when my mother still smiled at me, even if it was forced. The days when Shane was just my foolish little brother arguing over a toy. Those memories were like shards of glass, sharp, untouchable, but I held onto them because they were part of me. Alan became an indispensable part of my new life. He was no longer just the janitor at Skyline Dynamics. I offered him a role as a security consultant, but he just laughed and declined. "I like the simple life, Lincoln," he said, but he still showed up every week, bringing a cup of coffee and stories from his military days, like a father figure I'd never had. One time, he took me to a small bar on the outskirts where he and other veterans gathered. There, amid laughter and war stories, I felt something I'd never experienced with the Fletcher family. Sincerity. "Family is the people who stay by your side through the storm," Alan had once said, and I realized he was my family now. Not blood, not false promises, but someone who stood up for me when the world turned its back. I cherished him not just for saving my life, but for showing me I could rise again even when everything had fallen apart. One evening, as I sat in my office, gazing at the horizon where the Arizona desert stretched endlessly, I wrote a letter, not meant for anyone but myself. In it, I poured out the lessons I'd learned. The truth, though painful, sets us free. Justice doesn't bring complete happiness, but it allows us to hold our heads high. And most importantly, I wrote, "Blood can betray you, but honor and righteousness never will. What matters is daring to stand up, daring to cut away what's toxic to protect yourself and what you believe is right." I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and stood. Outside, Phoenix still glowed with vibrant lights, but this time I didn't feel alone. The road ahead was still full of challenges, but I walked it unburdened by the past. A quiet but resolute voice within me spoke. "I lost everything to keep myself. And that was the most important victory of all."